Miss Coco Brown in the house. I'm so excited to have you here, my friend.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I don't even think I shared this with you, but I want to share it because I think it's such a powerful lesson in pausing to share when you hear something that really resonates with you or do the outreach. Did I ever share with you how you came into my life?
I don't think so. Maybe not.
So, a friend of mine had sent me the Dell Women's Education Network. I think they call it DWEN events. And she was like, Meg, I think it'd be great, a different network for you. And I was like, sure, you don't have to ask me twice. So I get on one of these events and I hear this woman speak. Her name was Lydia Falaci. And I was just like, wow, you're so on point. You're so real. You know how you can just tell when people are real and
Yeah.
no
Oh, yeah.
bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So I stopped after the event, I sent her a message on LinkedIn and I was like, Lydia, girl, you killed that. There were so many nuggets and I can't thank you enough. And became friends. And then as I was building this movement on intentionality, on detoxing off the drug of achievement, she said, you have to follow Coco and the Athena Alliance.
Huh.
And the first event I went to was the one you did with Betsy Atkins, all
Mm.
on empathy
Mm-hmm.
and these small little things that in the busyness of the pings and the dings of our days, how quick we forget, but how soul quenching they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And
That's great.
I thought to myself, oh, I am loving me this Coco Brown. I gotta follow her. So then after the event, I started stalking you and I was like, you gotta come on the podcast and brought you here today.
Ah, that's fabulous. I love it. I love it. I
Yeah.
love those. I there was it was a while ago, but someone said, "Oh, I was on an airplane back from wherever, and the person next to me said, you've got to check out Athena Alliance." And then just this week, I do these CEO perspective series. It's interviewing prominent CEOs about how did they get there. And so, I've this one was with Tiger Tyagaran, who is the CEO of Genpact, which is one of the biggest consulting companies in the world. And it's like 10 years in a row been voted one of the most ethical companies in the world. Anyway, we get started. And he said, by the way, my sister said, what are you doing speaking at Athena Alliance? Which is really funny. His sister lives in San Francisco and apparently knows about Athena Alliance. And so, anyway, it's
Don't
pretty
you
fun.
love? I think one of the best gifts in life that we
Mm,
are so quick to forget about in the busyness of it all is these beautiful little serendipitous moments.
yeah. Yes, and we think of those as like kismet and happy accidents and divine intervention and various other things. But actually, these kind of moments happen a lot to people who have an attention to the strength of weak ties.
Mm.
That there's this gravitation towards strong ties, right? Like your family, your friends, your soccer team, your kids soccer team, your church, your core group, uh and we rely on that and we think of it as our personal board of directors or like the core group that's going to help us and drive us forward and give us the momentum and make the connections and all of those things, when in fact actually the greatest success, and this is from studies out of Stanford from the 1970s, the guy who's still there writing books, but around the strength of weak ties, is that weak ties are the ones that actually create the greatest momentum and action and opportunity in career. And those are the ones where you say yes. You're someone said, hey, come, listen to this Dell women's event, and then you met Linda, and then Linda said, oh, you need to meet Coco,
Yeah.
and then you met Coco, and then and we feel like these are all happy accidents and nice kismets and accidental, but they're actually because of the intentionality and who we are.
I love that. Coco, for the woman that is listening right now, or anyone listening, any listener who's listening and thinking, I love that you had this connection. I love that you have leveraged your network, you two. But I don't have a network. I don't have people to leverage. What would be your advice to them on air quote getting in front of these weak ties or putting out the ask? We always hear about that. Like, how can they utilize the people they know or they don't know, their weak ties, in order to make these air quote happy accidents happen in their life?
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, but it's just a matter really quite literally of putting yourself out there. I remember when I was
Mm.
20, let's see, how old was I? I was 25, I guess. 25 or 26. My birthday's in October and I'm on, 1970, so I never know, am I like right now, am I 52 or am I 53?
Or you can be like me and just make it up. Sometimes I'm like, I don't even know how old I am.
I don't even know how old I am. Yeah, exactly. I always make myself older than I am because that is just more comfortable. But
Me too. Me too, actually. And you know what's so interesting? I don't know if you do this. I will round up or round down depending on what works for me.
mhm.
So if it's like the price of something, for some reason, sometimes I'll tell myself, oh, well, it was only like $20, even if it was closer to 30, but the $20 feels more right. Do you do
Yeah, actually that sounds like a trick my kids play on me more though.
that?
I'm like, you're forgetting taxes. It's actually closer to $40.
Yes, so true. So true. So I cut you off.
No, but
You were talking about, yeah, go, go, go.
yeah, yeah. When I was 25 or 26 years old, and I decided that I was going to make a product. This was back in the days of the very early HTML, you know, websites going mainstream. I had been dating a guy who was getting his PhD at Stanford, and so I knew about the internet, in the early 90s and whatnot. But this was when the internet started really taking off and people started building websites, right? And I started building web content, and I built a fully customizable HR handbook. It had all the federal and state laws covered in it, and then it had these blank areas where you could insert your, what you wanted out of it as a company. And so I did that, and then I had these, HTMLized PowerPoint documents that were training for managers with my voice over it, and it was pretty revolutionary at the time. And I decided I wanted to go out on my own and sell this product that I had, but I knew nothing and no one, So I went to the VP of engineering of the company that I was working for, and he had just recently left. And I said, how do I get my business started? And he said, oh, I'll introduce you to a couple of venture capitalists. And they said, nice idea, kid, but where's your business plan and all of your partners? And so that didn't go very far. But I found the more I put myself out there, then I talked to Chiming Shi, who's the software development manager, and he introduced me to a friend from somewhere else. And, they might know some people. And I just put it out there. And I kept finding that the more you put it out there, the more the world around you rises to meet you. Both negative and positive. You can get it negative if you're looking for it too. But if you just keep telling people what you're doing and socializing the idea, and the whole time while you're doing it, reciprocity in mind, thinking about the other person and what would be meaningful to them in this. Most people,
Mm.
the outcome that is meaningful to them is just a thank you and coming back to them and telling them what the result was. Like, they just want to bask in a part of your success, right? Like, I made that connection. I made that happen. And so when you circle back and then they make more connections for you. So I think no matter how old you are, in the end, I ended up selling that product. I couldn't get it going on my own, but I ended up selling it to a company that bought all the rights out for like $80,000. For like $80,000. And then and I didn't even get any royalties or anything. But I was like, wow, here I am, like 26 years old, and I sold a product.
Yeah.
um, and I know a young woman who's in her early 20s who she's just making her way, but she keeps, she teaches me things about machine learning and about AI, and she talks to me about, sort of younger generations and what they're thinking. And so then I'm looking out for her too. And I think it doesn't matter if you don't have a network. It's a matter of whether you have intentionality around what you're trying to accomplish in the world. And even if it's just curiosity and exploring, and also the disposition towards thinking about the other person too, and what you can do for them.
I love that. In a world, we use this word all the time in my sales career with them. What's in it for me? And I
Yeah.
think we are so quick to think about what are we going to get out of the conversation. And I love how you just said, how can you leverage and how can you intentionally also make sure that you're doing something, you're extending a hand, an act of kindness, making a connection for the person across the screen from you or in person. I
Yeah.
love that. Coco, I want to talk about your journey to building this movement, this community of Athena. I love how you say it's built on activating
Mhm.
connection, knowledge, and opportunities through female executives. Mike Fuffin drop. I love that. Talk to us about your journey to get here.
Yeah. I well, so I've always been in a female body, and I consider myself a woman, and that makes a lot of sense to me. And so ultimately my vision, my purpose isn't strictly to advance women. Um, it is I have a transgender woman on my board who wasn't always in a woman's body. I mean, it hasn't always been able to be the woman she wanted to be. um, I believe in non-binary. I believe gender is a social construct. So when you have that sort of backdrop for yourself, you do have to challenge yourself over time as to who are you for women. And so I think,
Mm,
to kind of clarify that, um, my journey has always been in my 20s. I never really thought about my gender, except to say that I wore my hair back really severely and put on more makeup and wore glasses, and I sort of knew that I needed to look older and be more taken more seriously.
mm,
But I thought that from sort of a glass ceiling perspective, that was mostly gone, that by the time I was going to get up to that glass ceiling, it would be completely gone. And that, my mom and her generation burned their bras in the 60s and all of that, right? So it was all over. So I think my generation, the Gen X women who started their careers in the 90s, kind of let go of the vision, right?
mhm.
And just kind of started doing our careers and thinking about ourselves and being what we had to be to advance. And then it wasn't until my early 30s when I took over. So I became the vice president of professional services for a deeply technical IT company in the late 90s. I was 28 years old, and I was running 2/3 of the business, fast approaching 100 million in revenue. And, it did hit 100 million in revenue at the peak. And so here I am with, like, 500 people reporting to me, and super young, and not qualified by anybody's imagination, but I had proven myself capable. And so I got the shot to run the that part of the business. And then when the bust happened, um our company nearly imploded. It was truly like we went from 100 million to 10 million in what felt like overnight. And the two owners of the business, essentially came out of retirement and said, they'd met me before, but hey, nice to meet you, Coco. And we want you to do a turnaround and become the COO, and then become the president, and everything reported to me. I was the one report to the CEO. And I started to feel my gender, because
Mm.
here I am, at that point, early 30s. I just had a baby. I look really young. I'm non-technical in a deeply technical male dominated field. And so, I didn't let it I didn't attend to that. I was just like, okay, I got to stay out of bankruptcy, and I got to,
Yeah.
and I just did the turnaround and pulled the phoenix from the ashes, and did all those things. And then by 2005, I realized that I was really, frustrated with, I'd walk into rooms and people would look at me funny or not understand what, like, and I started meeting female CIOs, chief information officers, and they'd say, I'm the only one in the valley. And I'd say, no, no, there's another. And, and so I started a dinner group. So long story short, I started this dinner group that then became the foundation for Athena. And
Mm.
I've told that story many times, but the part I haven't really told a lot is that That's the reason that Athena is for women. Because me, Coco, I want, my vision is the United Nations. My vision is to see all of the top ranks of leadership mimic the demographics of society as a whole. I was born in Southeast Asia. I've lived in 3 continents. I was brought up on the, all sorts of different religions, Ramayana and Zen Buddhism, all sorts of things. So I don't subscribe, to sort of the pendulum swinging that we do. And I'd rather see us all move forward. But I know that women need a competitive advantage. I know that women need the attention first. And it's not because we need something the men don't need at all. They need all of the things that Athena does. It's just we're giving it to women first because women deserve the competitive advantage. And also women are uniquely qualified to be the ones to define the next generation business landscape, the next generation modern business way of being, because we are the ones without the power. The ones with the power don't care to change things, right? Mm-hmm. And so we're going to do that. And then when the time is right, we'll start bringing the men in. But we're not going to do it as all of a sudden, it's going to be a reverse history. History written by women, and then the men come in.
Well, here's to the courage, girl, to act on it. I think we so quickly have these ideas in our head, but before they even formulate on our lips, or before we even have enough courage to speak them out, we talk them out of our head and we're like, nope, I can't do that. Nope. And I love the fact that you courageously, vulnerably, authentically have built this community. Did you ever think it would get to where it is today? Or have you ever gifted yourself the moment to look back on the building blocks and be like, yeah, I can see how it all led up to this?
The only thing that I can say I sort of always felt or knew instinctively and was never an option was that I was always going to be an entrepreneur, and I was always going to be in charge, not in an ego way, but like I'm perfectly fine taking the helm and being in front, right? I have no worry about being on stage. I mean, I do get a bit of stage fright occasionally, but but I get a thrill out of being on stage. I get a thrill out of being the buck stops here. It all comes down to, whereas I've heard a lot of people say to me, I'm most comfortable being second. I want to be a COO, not a CEO, right? And which is totally fine too. But I think the thing that I always knew about myself is that I was going to be a CEO. I was going to be in charge. I was going to be an entrepreneur. And so I always have been, even when I was just a cog in the machine in my early 20s, I've been my own personal CEO. I've always been driving to, create the next thing and be a solution. And that's how I ended up with my first VP role, is just solutioning and then being visible in my solutioning. And but the answer to your question is no, I could never have imagined that Athena would be what it is, that I would have accomplished what I've accomplished, that we, Athena, would have accomplished what we've accomplished. Athena has many mothers, just to be clear. It's not just all me. We've had lots of people along the way who, if they didn't do their part, Athena wouldn't exist. Mm-hmm. And some of it is, someone just saying, Coco, don't let go of this community of women that you built a dinner group out of. That was Gina Rahag. Without that, if I had, it wouldn't exist. I would have gone and done something different. So I think it's more about my dad. He's in his 80s now, but he's an economist, and he has his PhD in economics. And so he was always sending me business books. You got to read Porter, and you got to read this guy and that guy. And then finally he sent, and it was all about like the 10-year plans and the 30-year plans and the strategy and I hated all these books. And and then he sent me a book called Emergent Strategy. And I was like, yeah, just the title alone, that's me. Like, what does that mean? It means you experiment until something works, and then it's a strategy. I'm like, yes. That's logical, right? You can't plan it all out and be perfect in your, your plan. Like it's the reverse of that. You experiment and play around and try, and then something works and you go, oh, let's do more of that, less of that. And then, you look back and you go, well, there's our strategy. Let's keep doing that. And that's, I think, how you end up where we are, like just believing, experimenting, trying, taking the next step, not being so far out in advance that you can't take the next step because
Mm.
it's no longer logical because you played it out too far and now you think you have to take 5 steps from now when you only had to take the next step. Like it's really very organic.
Yeah. As you're saying that, it makes me flash too as someone who's a control freak, as someone who feels the need to plan every little thing. Like I remember when Michael and I were getting married, I thought it was a great time to build this business and also throw in IVF to it as well, because why not? And also plan a wedding.
Yeah.
That's gonna end well. And I just think as those that are so used to planning and want to plan everything out, how quick we are to dismiss this beautiful thing called curiosity and just
Mhm.
check in action on it. And as you were talking about, it's just the step. Do the step in front of it, then do another step. And it just makes me think about the power of curiosity and what a gift that is.
Yeah, I think obviously my husband is more of the like, well, have we thought through all of the things? I'm like, let's just do it. Like
Yeah,
we
girl.
can have some friction in that realm. And then you have to sort of realize and appreciate the balance of that. I have that in my team. My chief product officer, which is probably a good thing, is the one who's like, no, we're not going to do that until you show me that it's going to stick, because then we're going to have to undo all of that. Like, and I'm like, let's just do that. And so I do think you have to have like the balancing act, somebody who in your life is sort of checking some of those things that you want to just barrel forward to.
Mm.
It is more of the planner that has thought through, all of the different consequences, balanced with the person who says, let's just go for it. Let's just do it. And we'll figure it out along the way.
Yeah. Coco, I want to go back to something you said, and I wrote it down because it popped out of the screen to me when you talked about the power of intrinsically listening to your intuition is what I got out of that. And I read this quote this morning from Sarah Blakely.
Mm.
Love her. And she was just talking about the fact that listen, I failed the LSATs twice. I have
Mhm.
$5,000 to my name. I was not a trust fund baby, but I had this vision. I listened to my gut and I was kind while I was doing it. And those things really led me to the path to give me the courage to move on and continue after I had fail after fail. Do
Yeah.
you have any sort of practice or any sort of recommendation to the listener that has no idea how to listen to their intuition or what that even means? Do you do anything in your day to day where you give yourself the space to hear it? And what does that look like?
One of the things that I've done is that I I have noticed there a couple of times in my life where I've had really horrific things, and it's not just me, it's my family, where we without telling the whole story, we had to fire sale our house and float our 401k and borrow money from friends, and like, and when you're that far down, it's so easy to succumb to self-doubt and to just be like, oh my God, like, and fall into protection mode, right? And definitely not be like just pure risk mode. And then you've got some people who are just pure risk mode, like super hubris, but I think those are narcissists. And and so you don't want to be a narcissist who's just like, whatever, I'll just I'm just out for myself, and I will take crazy risks with other people. When you're taking risks that impact other people, your family, the friends who lent you money, those kinds of things. Um, it's very easy to doubt yourself, because self-doubt is in part like a self-protection mechanism, right? It's like
Mm.
you got to take the safe route.
Mhm.
And whereas, but there's been some moments like when we were selling our house, there was this moment where this both a lawyer and a realtor was saying, yeah, take that offer. That's it. That's the offer. You should take it. It's the safe bet, etc. And there was this moment, and I remember where I was. I remember driving. I remember, and it was this very definitive no, no, no way. That is not a good offer. No. And I just, and it came out of my mouth and I said, no, 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 no. And I called another friend who was a realtor and I said, we need to do this. And she said, great. And she came out and she did videos. And I mean, it ended up phenomenal. Right. But my point is that I look back at that moment. I have other moments like that where I'm like, that was a moment. That was a moment where my instinct, where my intrinsic gut, where I knew, and I think we all have those moments. I had it when my baby was born.
Mhm.
My first child was born, and the nurse came in to try to teach me how to breastfeed. And she was like holding his head, and I was like, no, there's those moments, right? Where you're like, I got this. Like, just give me some time to figure it out. And then if I need you, I'll call you, right? Like, but I think we all have them. And so I think what's really important is to notice them and to notice
Mm.
when they happen and to notice, under sort of what kinds of circumstances and when you follow them, is it is it right? Like I have also equally on the other side moment my daughter and I were driving up to the city to go to a museum and she had a bunch of her stuff in the car and I was like, we should take that out of the car. And I said we should take that out of the car and then it didn't come out of the car and then I thought, well, maybe, I should say it again and then the car got broken into, right?
Mhm.
And I had those moments where I'm like, why didn't I listen to myself?
Yeah. God, girl, looking back on so many decisions I made in my life that were not the right decision to make, and how many times I had that little whisper that told me not to do it and I did it anyway.
Yeah.
But to your point, I think it's also so valuable to be aware of those moments as well.
Yeah.
I
Well, and
want
maybe we do that anyway because the stakes, like I've noticed the times where I'm like, no, the stakes are super high.
to.
Like in that moment where my son, even thinking about that, like the moment when my son and I are bonding for the very first time, and I think I kind of got it, but I'm having a little bit of struggle. Like to me, that the stakes were so high in that moment. Like, no, this is my moment, right? And the same thing with the selling the house. It was like the stakes were so high, and I knew what compromising meant. It meant that we were taking very much the safe road, but nobody was going to win on that safe road. And so I was like, I've got to go the more difficult road, and I know it, and I just know it. And sometimes the stakes aren't as high, like you go, oh, I wish I'd listened to myself, but I didn't. Lesson learned, you know.
I never paused to think about that, Coco, but that is such a mic drop moment. Like I look back on my own life. I was just telling the story to a girlfriend the other day that when I started this business, I just had this inner gut feeling and man, it was strong. Like it wasn't a whisper. It was screaming at me and I could not ignore it anymore. Where I walked into work the one day and I was like, I'm going part-time so I can explore this. Never even asked my new husband, never even had a conversation with him. Came home that afternoon and said, "Hey, my paycheck's been cut in half."
That's yeah,
And now I look back and I think, oh God, like that was so ballsy. But to your point, the stakes were so high for me. I know I had to do this.
yeah,
And
yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, all of us have those, whether we notice them or not. And I think the trick is to start noticing them because then you realize more about yourself, about when you're going where, when there's something so strong inside you that you're just not, you don't have a choice but to follow your instinct.
Yeah. I want to talk about the multiple hats that you wear, my friend, as a mother, as a wife, as an entrepreneur, as serving on boards, as writing publications, as lighting the world on fire. and using your voice and your wisdom and your network, how do you not lose yourself in it all?
Well, I have one really great monitor right there.
Hello.
She just came in to give me soup. But my daughter Malia is a really great friend, and she is often a good measure of, she's doing a little heart thing.
Oh, I love that.
She's a good measure of, like, and I think lots of people play different roles in your life, but Malia definitely helps me to make sure I'm not neglecting,
Mm.
not neglecting things. So, for example, she works on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and she works alone in this awesome little shop, and so she's there all by herself most of the day. So I'm like, so I often on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I just cut out for an hour and I go crochet in Malia's shop, right? Like, I mean, I just try to fit it all in. There's no such thing as balance. There's no such thing as, this is the regular times for this and the regular times for that. Like, you have to integrate, you have to make it work. And my kids tell me how I need to integrate for them, my work tells me how it needs me to integrate for it, my board meetings are scheduled way in advance. um you know i um I think that it's, like what you were saying about how you decided to do all these things at once, IVF, get married, start a business, all these things at once. It's like sometimes you have to do all of them at once, and it doesn't actually add up to three things or five things or four things. It's not, they actually become very interwoven in their
Mm.
own way, and my kids are, super involved in understanding my work, and they so I can't quite explain it, but it's not compartmentalized, and it doesn't, I think, that saying, if you want to get something done, give it to a busy person. I think it's because we just figure out how to juggle.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you talked about the harmonization of it all. I think that there's this, I don't know where this was created, but this sort of that you live in the one lane, and that's the only lane you live in, versus you can't weave in and out. And isn't that life? Like you're wearing multiple hats, your wife, mother, building this business, a board member, all of these things, and it's interwoven. Like you don't have to stay in one lane all the
No.
time. I want to talk about the fact that you, my friend, earlier this month, we're recording this in March. You were in Abu Dhabi,
Yes.
rubbing some elbows at the Forbes Summit. Hillary Clinton, Billie Jean King, Jessica Alba in that room.
Mhm.
Girl, did you look around? You were like, damn, this is amazing. Was the energy on fire? What did you walk away with?
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, there was Elena Zelenska was there. She's the first lady of the Ukraine. There were these amazing women who are taking the mantle for women in Afghanistan and Iran. I mean, in Afghanistan, women are completely invisible. They're not allowed to go anywhere on a company. They're not allowed to make money. They're not allowed to get educated, and they have to be covered. Like, you can't be more invisible than that. And, these women are just doing incredible things globally. And that's what it was. It was the Forbes 3050 summit. And led by uh, Mika Brzezinska, and she's of Mornings with Joe, and it was really inspiring. There were only about 300 of us, and one thing that I walked away from it with is that no one was saying lean in, burn out, great breakup, burden. I feel like here in the United States, we are so focused on the burden of
Mm,
women. Not to say that it doesn't exist, because it does, but it's sort of a privileged attitude to talk so much about, well, I'll just opt out, or I'm just going to break up with, corporate world, or most women can't do that. They don't get to, right? So sort of, and also minimizing us down into um kind of these sets of weights on our shoulders make it feel like we're really just Sisyphus carrying the rock up the hill and then rolling back down and carrying it up the hill and rolling back down. And all these women were just talking about moving forward, and that's it. Just And there was a ton of positivity because what choice do they have?
Mm.
Right?
Yeah.
And and so I loved it because the focus was more like, how can we help each other? How can we lift each other up? How can we keep moving forward? How can we do these things in spite of the fact that, that there are a lot of things that are moving backwards? Um, Whereas I feel like here in the US, we get all fired up about the latest, um, media article that said Susan Wojcicki, who's famously wealthy as a founder of YouTube, stepped down from being the CEO of YouTube, and it's all because she burned out. And it's like, even if that's what she said, like, why does that have to be the narrative? She also
Mm.
can just check out for now. Guys do it all the time. Do you
Yeah.
think she's going to check out forever? No, she's too young. She's not going to check out. So why, so that was my big difference, Abu Dhabi versus here. Getting to have a photo with Gloria Steinem and with Moira from Schitt's Creek, aka Catherine O'Hara, amazing.
Was there just so much energy in the room? Was it palpable? Could you like
Yeah.
cut it with a knife? Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fantastic. It was really great. And all different cultures too. Lots of Arab women, you know, um, a lot of Americans. But yeah,
Coco, I want to ask you, for the woman listening right now that's tired,
yes.
that feels like she's just going through the motions, living the life in autopilot, sleepwalking. She knows she's meant for more. Back to that inner gut whisper. That's
Mm-hmm.
scary as all hell, and it's a bit of a whisper, but she doesn't know what to do. What would your advice be to her? What is one small step, one micro step, one nugget that she can use to just honor what her soul, what that gut whisperer is trying to tell her?
Yeah. I mean, I hear you. I hear it all the time. Women are exhausted and tired, and we do have an unfair share of the burden at home culturally and en masse. It's not universally true, but it's mostly true. Um, and um, and also we have lots of setbacks, as an example, women get less than 2%, 1.9% of venture funding. It's actually slipped back, so we don't get funded to build businesses. Like there's just so much to be tired about. But what I would say is a couple of things. One is contentment is a choice. Maybe you
Mm.
can't be happy, right? Maybe that requires some other things, but contentment, I think, is a choice. And in order to choose contentment, you do have to know your table stakes. You do have to know what's non-negotiable for you, right? And so I travel a lot. That doesn't really make me happy, actually, because it makes my family unhappy.
Yeah.
But I get content with it because I know how to make the trade-offs. Okay, well then when I'm home on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, I go crochet in Malia's shop for an hour. Like I find ways to become content by making sure I'm always measuring things in my own mind. Like, where are the trade-offs, and am I balancing it properly? There isn't balance, but integrating it properly. And so I would say for some of you women out there, it's, channel your inner Meg, right? Like, you went in and said, I'm cutting my salary in half, right? Like,
Yeah.
here's the positive. The world is attending to women. The world is wanting us to accelerate. The world is behind us succeeding. So if you're not happy where you are, you're not content where you are, go find another job.
Mm.
Can you really
Mm.
can and it's amazing to me how many people always, when they're losing a job or thinking they're going to lose a job, they're like, oh my gosh, I got to find the next thing and line it up really quick. And then they always say, I wish I'd taken more time. Always, 100% of the time, they say, I wish I'd taken a little bit more time, because it's not a matter of whether you're going to pick yourself back up off your feet, off the ground. You will. You absolutely will. You've got skills, you've got capability, you've got, even if you don't have people around you, you have skills, you have capability, and you can go do a lot more than you think you can.
I love that. I love that. As you're talking about that, it just made me flash to looking back at my own journey. It was always going up the ladder to the next job, to the next promotion, never really thinking to myself, well, if this is this what I want? Just thinking, okay, well, it's the next promotion, next pay scale. Okay, sign me up. That's what I should be heading on up this hustle ladder. And I was having a conversation with a girlfriend of mine. She is turning 50 and
Mm.
she left her job, very high level position. And she said, Meg, for the first time, I am taking a moment to think, what do I want?
Yes.
And she said, I'll tell you though, it is like a mental fuckery because all of these other folks that I see on my social feeds or friends or getting the promotion, climbing up the corporate ladder, and I find myself shooting all over myself, saying I should be back out there, I should be doing it. But she said I am fighting this constant battle with myself. And I
Yeah.
think we all do, right? We all fight this constant battle.
Well, we
But
have to redefine. So I think there's sort of a couple things. There's that woman that you just described has reached a level of vocational freedom, and
mm,
and she is now in a phase where she can think about herself the way she thinks about a financial portfolio. Right? You don't just have stocks and bonds and savings and checking. Once you get to a sophistication in the way you think about your own financial well-being, you think you have a more complex strategy, right? And same thing with us as a career. And we become a brand, we have impact that we can deliver in a multitude of ways. And you're hitting 50. It's just, used to be that we retired at 55, right? But you're going to work in some form of fashion for another 20 years. So the question is, what do you want that 20 years to be? And it's no longer about climbing the ladder and the next thing. And it becomes about like, how broad is the portfolio of me? And what I want in terms of my impact and the kinds of places where I want to put myself. And so, and, I think the idea that we have one career is way out the window by this point, because of some of the longevity of things, but also because how quickly careers change these days. But so I think, for her, stepping back and going, okay, do I want to dabble in investing a little bit in the future businesses that I would like to see thrive? Do I want to maybe join some boards if that seems like it's a possibility for me, maybe nonprofit, maybe, commercial. Do I want to take another operating role? Maybe not for now, but maybe I can do some consulting and maybe I'll write that book I've always wanted to write. Like that's vocational freedom, right? That should be celebrated and valued because it's something everybody strives for. And then you're going to make, when you think about yourself that way and you open up this sort of portfolio approach to your brand, your impact, who you can be in that next 20 years, you will become bigger
mm.
than the person who just took the next promotion and the next promotion and is just a cog in the machine at a higher level.
Coco, take me to church, girl. I'm about ready to throw down the mic, throw my hands up in the air, preach it to me, girl. How broad is the portfolio of me? Oh my God, mic drop. I love that. And, how powerful it is the questions we ask ourselves. I always believe that your life is a direct result of the questions you ask yourself. And,
Yes.
right?
I
And
love that when you were talking this morning. I love that phrase, the questions you ask yourself and learning how to talk to yourself, you said. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Coco, I want to talk about Athena Alliance. Well, actually, let me go back 1 second. As we're talking about the conversations that you have with yourself, isn't it so interesting that we're never taught out of all these communication skill sets that we're taught? none of them that I've taken anyway have been around how to have the conversation with yourself.
Yeah.
And I find that, at least in the conversations I've had, that in our world, when you get to a certain rank, to a certain tier, we forget that you're human.
Hmm.
How do you handle, or what are some intentional steps that you do? And I'm going to say this in my beautiful Philadelphia way. When that asshole in your mind starts chirping at you, how do you handle that?
Um, well, if the asshole's right, for example, I made a mistake um a couple weekends ago, 2 weekends ago, in some of my communication with my team. It was a tough moment. Silicon Valley Bank had just blown up
Oh,
and
yeah.
what that we'd lost all of our money and I didn't do the best job of communicating about a piece of that. And the asshole in my head was like, Coco, you're an asshole. You messed that up, right? And so in that case, what I do and what I did was I got the team together and I apologized to them. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I think if you need to be helpful to yourself, right? So if that voice in my head is telling me something I do need to listen to, then I need to do something about it. Because one of the things we do is we just beat ourselves up, but then we don't do anything about it. We just try to let time go by, right? And it's like, okay, that I deserved that. So let me fix it. I got to go tell them I'm sorry, tell them why I'm sorry, tell them what happened, move on. And so that's okay. Um, but then otherwise, I think the I tell my daughter all the time, like you got to be your own best friend. And if when something comes out of your mouth about yourself, you got to ask yourself, would any of your friends ever say that to you? Would you ever say that to anybody else? I think that's what we have to do for ourselves.
I love that. I read something the other day that your thoughts become the house that you live in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How Talk to us about Athena Alliance. Who can join the community? How can we find out more?
Mm-hmm. So Athena, you can find out more on the website, athenaalliance.com. That's the easy part. Or we can, there's every month we hold open look inside Athena, and I show up to that. And it's this great discussion about what people are trying to accomplish. And so it's a great way to kind of get a face to face and a live engagement. So that you can find on the website too under events. So Athena is for people who are in and around the C-suite, the CEO's office, and the boardroom. So the simple is like C-suite, CEO's office, boardroom, got it, right? But the around part is the complex, right? So generally speaking, we say if you're in the corporate world, then you don't want to be so far removed from the C-suite that it's not yet relevant for you to be engaging with people there and learning about that space, right? So maybe that's senior director, maybe that's VP, depends on your company, the size of your company, sort of how much experience you have and time in that. We're not dictatorial in it, but we do say, you think about whether or not we're the right community for you, and we will also come back to you and tell you if we think we're not the right community for you. But it was very important for us to say, we are fluid in that realm because otherwise you lose a lot of diversity.
Mm.
There's a lot of women of color, for example, who have been completely passed by, and they sit in these ranks of, senior director and VP and can't get into the C-suite. So they absolutely belong in Athena. And then you also have obscure titles and government functions and things. So it's hard to just be title. And then also people who are investing in companies and people who are founding companies to scale. So that's kind of the realm of Athena. Yeah.
Wonderful.
And
Guys, I will make sure that we link the website in the show notes so you can just click on that. And I am a huge advocate of following Athena on LinkedIn. Coco will so often open these beautiful salons of this community and great authentic conversations to the public. And they're virtual. They're an hour and they are so soul quenching.
And we're doing one with you coming up in a few
That's
weeks.
right. We are doing one in April.
What's
Thank
the
you.
date?
Oh my God, what is the date? You think I would know that? April 19th.
April 19th. Okay. So yeah, so they should show up to that. April 19th. They'll get a little bit of a flavor of Athena, certainly. April 19th at 12 p.m. Pacific.
That's right. And then Coco, for the listener that is like me and salivating over your multiple mic drop moment, sharing your own journey and your nuggets of wisdom. How broad is the portfolio of you? I love that. That should be on a t-shirt. Where can we stay connected with you? Where can we follow you? Where can we
Yeah.
stalk you?
Yeah. LinkedIn is my best, the best way to follow me. And I'm pretty sure if you type in Coco Brown, I'll pop to the top.
Yeah.
And if you say, hey, Coco, I listened to you on Meg's podcast, then I for sure say, great, let's connect.
So, Coco, thank you for one, making the time. I think we look at our calendars and we have these beautiful things that we want to do, but we are so quick to say I'm too busy. So I
Mm.
thank you for making the time to show up, to put the mask down, to have a human first conversation vulnerably and authentically and share your nuggets, your mistakes, your learnings. This has been such a soulful conversation and I know that our community will fall in love with you and get nuggets like I have. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. I love your style.
Mm, I love you.